welcome back once again. We have the Think Fitness Life podcast with your host, myself, Matt Gluckman, and we have Eric Menchie and Mike Urso over there in Boston. And for those of you who are just tuning in for the first time, we are three personal trainers who really focus on the bigger picture and longevity. And we talk about mindset and your psychology that plays a role into your health. We talk about your, the actual workouts that you're doing in and out of the gym and just daily activity. And then as well, following up with your nutrition, stress, sleep management, all that stuff plays a role. We invite people to send in questions. Our email is thinkfitnesslife@gmail.com. And today we are going to be talking about homeostasis, which is a very cool phenomenon in the body. And we have two great experts here with me that'll dive into more of the science behind it. But just a brief definition is just your body's ability to maintain equilibrium based upon internal environment and external stimulus. I guess would be a brief way of defining it. Maybe I'll let you guys each define that.
I think it's how your organisms maintain a stable internal environment, essentially, using feedback loops. We'll get into it. We'll get into it.
I like it. We'll keep it that simple because we got a few pieces of news we want to go over. I got one. I know Eric has one. So I'll start off with mine because it's a little bit lighter before we dive into some of the nitty gritty. Someone sent me this today and it talks about the buffalo theory. I'd never heard of this thing, but apparently, let me just read this. It's from Cliff Clavin from Cheers. It says, well, you see, Norm, it's like this. A herd of buffalo can only move as fast as the slowest buffalo. And when the herd is hunted, it is the slowest and weakest ones at the back that are killed first. This is natural selection and is good for the herd as a whole because the general speed and health of the group keeps improving by the regular killing of the weakest members. In much the same way, the human brain can only operate as fast as the slowest brain cells. Excess intake of alcohol, as we know, kills brain cells. Naturally, it'll attack the slowest and weakest brain cells first. In this way, regular consumption of beer eliminates the weaker brain cells, making the brain a faster and more efficient machine. And that's why you always feel smarter after a few beers.
That's great.
It's just like pseudo logic, but I don't think it really works out to that.
Well, that was good up until the last couple sentences about beer. But I see where he's coming from.
Yeah, like I can see why someone would even hypothesize something like that, but I mean, there's no way. Like you said, kind of it was good up to the end because I think alcohol just kills brain cells. It doesn't target the weak or the slow ones. It's not as easy as picking off the one on the back of the herd that's slow. It just kills brain cells.
I don't know. I was thinking in a different sense, like, as you're sitting at a bar, because I'm thinking cheers, you're sitting at a bar, and as you get up there on your drinks, it's like the people who can't handle it have to dip out, and the strongest essentially survive till last call.
That's one way of interpreting it too.
So I found two today, and they kind of tie in together. And with you kind of speaking of alcohol and brain function, they found that mothers who consume alcohol but still continue to breastfeed, the kids later on have a higher % of developing cognitive issues, which I found pretty interesting. And there's some strong correlations between that, which leads to my second one, which is pharmaceutical companies are trying to use immunotherapy to heal Alzheimer's and cure Alzheimer's. So in the premise of they're starting to research this sigma-1 receptor, which helps reduce the plaque in the brain that causes Alzheimer's, and it signals the protein that will help create less oxidative stress and inflammation in the brain, which have known to be a cause of Alzheimer's. found it very interesting that they're finally going to kind of not attack, but like figure out what's going on with this whole, and in the last 50 years, but it's like it's one of the top 5 causes of death nowadays.
It's incredible.
But so the study was, I guess, just observing women who made the choice to continue to consume alcohol during pregnancy.
No, breastfeeding. So pregnancy, they didn't consume alcohol. But you know how some women come off and like, oh, I want to have a drink, a margarita, the first one in a while. Well, it says that there's traces of alcohol,
even when you're breastfeeding,
which has a huge effect on a baby's developing brain, which we talked about prior episodes. It's like, it's interesting that, like, I don't know, you start to think all this stuff and like, okay, now we're seeing decline of this, decline of that. It's quite amazing.
Well, in the animal world, right? It's kind of, you look at the cows who are fed grains and don't eat grass. You know, they develop differently, which is, you know, further from their you know, origin or wherever, you know. No, but wasn't immunotherapy essentially its initial purpose was for cancer, fighting cancer,
yes,
right?
And they're basically stealing the playbook from treatment for cancer and see if they're gonna it's gonna apply to Alzheimer's and dementia and all that jazz.
But what's crazy is, I don't know. I just feel like they're redirecting it because I feel like there's going to be some complication. You know, like why wouldn't they take some of these studies that they were doing with mycelium fibers in rats and proving that they were actually regrowing and repairing their pathways after they were basically induced with a hormone or a gene that mimicked Alzheimer's. I don't know, why wouldn't they just kind of further that research to make something that would, if they could prove that and show that it worked on humans and reversed Alzheimer's, why wouldn't they just sell like something like that to the public? And in my opinion, it's because then if they fix something, it's
I could
not
see
going to
that.
make anybody any money.
It goes hand in hand within the article said about, you know, restoring cellular balance in the body. And if you actually really look at what causes dementia and all that stuff, it's really like our lack of discipline when it comes to nutrition and behavior. Now, I'm sure there's other stuff that will cause it, but you know, main thing is, you know, how insulin in the brain reacts. It's like if you keep putting garbage into your brain, that plaque is just gonna stay there. Or
but think about putting garbage, right? Like think about how easy it is to, even if you go to Whole Foods, think about how easy it is to find crap there and still have a crap diet. Like it's set up, we're set up in such a shitty environment for eating healthily. I mean, carbohydrates and grains in general, they're not bad, but we made this label 20, 30 years ago that fats were bad. Fats were the problem. When in reality, fats are one of the most important things that we could have in our system. And we're talking about the brain and fueling the brain, there's so many more plaque builds up when you don't have enough fat for fueling your brain. And enough cholesterol.
Exercise is
you're right.
Physical activity is a huge
plays
component of it. Well, that's also just at the basic level. And Dave Asprey talks about this all the time. Speaking of fat, you know, is that it's a lot about mitochondrial dysfunction at its simplest level. You know, people just mitochondria just start to dysfunction, or they are killed off, and they don't, you know, create new ones or regenerate faster. And you know, essentially, this is what happens. It's like a steep decline. You know. And that's for most all diseases, honestly. Mitochondria has, you know, plays a, if not the most massive role in all of that.
Yeah, and the way that you can make and throw off your body's natural processes and your transmitters functioning properly, free sugars and refined carbohydrates, they can cause your body to not be able to absorb nutrients the right way. I was just reading an article the other day about how they did a study and they showed that when you're free sugars, so things that aren't natural sugars, stuff that, you know, like in an apple, that's going to be your natural sugars, but free sugars are anything that really shouldn't have been there, right? when that free sugar is increased, the amount of nutrients is decreased, right? So you're just getting, it's like if I eat a steak and broccoli and maybe a little bit of rice, and then I throw in like a couple cookies at the end of that, I'm now actually hindering my body's capacity to absorb those good nutrients and function properly. So think about how easy it is to get sugar these days in drinks, in breakfasts, in just everything. It's around us everywhere.
The two most important organs in our bodies are our heart and our brain, and it's heart disease and brain disease that has just been off the charts. Yeah, and so people aren't taking care of those two essential organs, that make the world go around and keep us in this world. And so, this is the whole part about when you talk about disease. Disease is dis-ease, the body being out of ease for, an extended or chronic period of time. And, homeostasis is like, you have some sort of effect on the body, and then the body reacts to it, it rebalances itself. But when your body is out of balance and you don't allow it to recover back properly, by taking care of yourself, eating properly, getting proper sleep, getting physical activity, all the things we talk about, not smoking, wearing your seatbelt, all those things, your body cannot recalibrate and rebalance itself. And so disease means your body is just in a dysfunctional, like negative homeostasis, balance for a long period of time. And it's only a matter of time, if you don't get a check on that your body will develop a heart disease or a brain disease.
Yeah. And then people wonder why we get into these, these high rates of those diseases. It's like, well, if you just step back and kind of look how we're causing the ramifications from behaviors and eating, at the end of the day, it's like we shouldn't be, it's great that we're developing medicine and stuff, but we should be more guiding people like, hey, we can literally curb this whole disease of dementia, Alzheimer's, if we just have a normal diet, which is restricting all processed, refined carbohydrates and all that stuff. So it's
like, people talk about the cure to things, and we technically do. It's being preventative and being proactive, but you have to really question what you're putting in your body and what, and taking a step further, as in you are what you eats, right? Or the quality of what you're eating. And so many people want to look at like one thing being good or bad, and like, I'll sit here and I'll tell you sugars are bad, and I'll sit here and tell you that fats are good, and I'll sit here and tell you that proteins are good. Are all fats good? Are all proteins good? No. Like, should you have you should be cooking probably with coconut oil or butter. You should be using extra virgin olive oil or olive oil for more of a cold or under 300 degrees, because you talk about smoking points. Then you talk about turning a good fat into now a bad fat. And the same thing with protein. People, I had this, it has some protein in it. It's like, I can go get a McDonald's burger and that's my protein, right? But no, think about the quality of protein from a stack of 3 McDonald's patties, and then like, we'll stick with ground beef, but we'll take something that's locally produced, usually something like at the grocery store, right? You find something that was from a local farm, that was a pasture raised type cow, ground beef, you go cook that. That's going to be much more nutritionally valuable to your body than the hamburger patties from McDonald's. So it's all relative. Proteins, fats, carbs, whatever it may be, it's about the quality of it and the sourcing.
Well, we're getting off homeostasis a little bit,
but my point
is like, if you think in the terms, but let's bring it back, because a lot of it's this overconsumption of carbohydrates, like you said. So from a homeostasis standpoint, what's happening there? Like, your blood glucose goes up, right? And then your body needs to recalibrate itself, so it's got to release insulin, and all these other processes have to happen. But the problem is we don't allow that negative feedback loop to correct itself, and then we feed ourselves again, right? And this is the whole general
we go back to the stimulus again and get the sensory response again, and we're just keeping that feedback loop,
and it doesn't balance itself out. And so this is what dis-ease is. This means your body is like out of ease for a long period of time. Going back to that, so this is really simple stuff to understand of why, these issues happen of people getting very sick. But you know, from as
But the important thing to then change is that sensory input. So if you find yourself stuck in that, that cycle of, you have something sweet, and then you're full, and then a couple hours later you have a craving again. You put something in your body, and then you're good for a couple hours, and then you're feeling a craving again. You have to change that beginning stimulus to then possibly get a
yeah,
change in
And
your body's
yeah. I mean, it
response.
works on it.
oh,
Go
dude,
ahead,
I was
Eric.
gonna say people have to realize that what they do daily is going to have an effect on homeostasis. So whatever you put in your body, if it's excess, your body's going to do something to try to find balance. And if it can't find balance, then you get these extreme diseases, or you get these extreme blood pressures, heart rates that
Well, yeah. First, they come in the
yeah.
form of
And then
symptoms. Exactly.
that
Yeah.
should be a sign right there that, like, hey, something's out of whack. But people, I think, for me, medication just puts a band-aid over that, and people just be like, oh, I'm good, I can blow through it. Like, you're not really fixing the issue. You're just kind of like covering it up and using a drug to lower something where the body should be doing that
Right.
on its own.
Yeah. And meanwhile, below the surface, these negative feedback loops are continuing to go and go and go without any type of rebalance. And this is this is what happens. All these symptoms piled up, but they're ignored because they're numbed, with medications instead of, like Matt said, the proactive approach where you get natural pain relief from doing exercise, because those chemicals are released in the body. So just the multiple effects of exercise on all of those things, building new brain connections, improving mitochondrial health, all of that.
Yeah, that's why I really like the whole 30 approach, just because it's just like 30 days and it's an elimination diet in a way that you slowly reintroduce things in your system, and you get you're more cognitively aware of how your body responds, and you get a better understanding of your relationship with food, and your relationship with your own internal um, cravings or stimuluses that you may feel like. I remember when I first started fasting, it would be like, oh, I'm thinking of food, but I'm not actually hungry. And then when I would get hungry, like, oh, well, when was the last time I drank a glass of water? Drink a glass of water and I'd be fine. Did that work every single time? No, but it was just kind of um, a learning experience. And I think that's kind of the first place people need to begin, is just kind of turning on that awareness and starting to become more aware of the signals that your brain's sending you, and um, maybe the signals that your stomach's sending you. I don't know. What do you guys think when you're trying to help somebody down to get better, and they're kind of trapped in these negative feedback loops?
Well, I think right there, you just kind of like, that's a reset, a homeostatic reset to me right there, is resetting the nutrition. So I think that is a very good place to start, because I don't think people realize how much you're doing for them with small resets like that, or just small little tasks that you put in front of people. And I think just making them aware of, if you go too far down one end of the road, it's not good. And if you go too far the other side, it's not good. Like, you have to have balance. I think some people get it, and then some people don't.
Yeah.
Are there any other homeostatic resets that you guys refer to or that you like?
You could almost say that, like, if you do fasting, keto, like, certain dietary strategies could be homeostasis resets. Exercise alone could be a reset. Meditation's a reset. I think a lot of what we do in our field can
True.
be used
Okay.
as
Yeah.
resets if done properly, because you're just kind of like breaking someone out of a pattern that they've been stuck in, or restoring balance to the system where stress is high and they can't or deal with it. So it's like, does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Just kind of getting them out of their routine, so to speak, because sort of the way that they're physically operating on a day-to-day basis is their own homeostasis, essentially, and they're giving the same sensory inputs every single day.
Yeah, I look at it as, well, we talk about feedback loops. The body's always giving feedback, and we have to pay attention to that. And, when somebody works out, or let's say they've been sedentary for like, the last 3 years, and then they get into the gym and you see them that first day, and you know that you got to take it easy with them on their movement, right? You can't load them up too much, because if they go home after that first workout, they're going to be so friggin' sore that they may not come back if you do too much, right? Because you're going from one extreme to the next. And so this is a massive, massive stressor on the body when somebody goes and works out for the first time. And so the body then, becomes really sore. It's the feedback loop that's basically saying, hey, this isn't normal for you. What are you trying to do? We need to build up stronger so that we can now approach this same workout next time and be able to get through it. Because what if he does this again and throws more at us, than what we're used to? So this whole process just kind of keeps rolling over. And so it works the opposite way too with people who are very conditioned. Let's say you've been working out for the last 3 years, 4 days a week, and you're really physically fit. But then you go on vacation, right? Let's say for a week, and you don't work out at all because you're too busy doing all these things. And then your body's just saying, why aren't you moving? Why aren't you working out? Like, I'm so used to it. And so the body then atrophies, and so there's this whole feedback loop that happens there too. And you you can kind of look at it as like this recalibration that's always happening. There's always feedback, and we don't always pay attention to it.
Well, it might not always be easy to pay attention to it, because sometimes the feedback might be 2 days later, or maybe not even that same day.
Yeah, but people are so, like, on a more grand level, people are so disconnected with their own bodies. Like, I see it so much, whereas people just don't take a look and, like, what's really going on here? Like, it's not healthy for me to not be able to go upstairs and not and not be in pain. Like, I need to change this. And there are people who are so stubborn they will not change. And it's just like, we are the creators of the the end result of, if we're now there's some genetic things, right? But via epigenetics, we now know that those cells for somebody who is predisposed to a brain cancer or a brain disease or a heart disease, we know that the environment, the food, all those things affect whether that actually happens from a genetic level. And so because of that, we have the ability, if we really are aware and pay attention, to dramatically reduce our ability to land ourselves in that just horrible position.
Yeah, and then people get comfortable at that, and they think that's normal. That becomes their new normal, and then it's a standard when people think, okay, well, as I age, I expect to get this, and I expect to do this, or I expect to see that. It's like, well, you really shouldn't as a society. And I find now with a lot of people, they're just like, oh, I've reached older age, and I'm just going to let this happen now. And I go, well, why? Age is a number, but doesn't mean you just stop.
I think there's a couple pieces of or a couple categories of people in this scenario, and I think there are definitely those stubborn type who just think they have it all figured out.
But if you know one, tell them to listen.
Just won't change. And quite frankly, they're definitely not even listening to this podcast, so they don't give a shit. But there are those people who weren't but tell them to tune in as many times. Just be persistent. Persistent is key, because eventually one day it'll click. I mean, I got yelled at by a client because I keep talking about fasting with him because he's not getting the physical changes that he wants, and he has not a bad diet, but it's just, if you want something you don't have, you have to be willing to do things you haven't done. And I remember in the session, he's like, "Listen, would you just stop? I'm not gonna fast." So I stopped talking about it. And then literally a week later, so Monday, he goes, "So
when the student is ready,
how would I go about fasting?" And it's just funny. Like, eventually it's going to click in their head, in someone's head. That's a good line. So like, there's gonna be those people who are arrogant to it and just think they have it all figured out, or whatever. Think that we're just dumb trainers who just pick things up and put things down anyway. So what do we have to say? And there's nothing we can do for those people because they have to make the change internally first before we can help them, right? But there are those people, I think, that start to become aware, start to like come online, right? Like start to become more cognizant of all these little issues, and almost before it was like a subconscious thing where you just expected to get older, you expected to lose posture as you get older, you expected to lose strength as you got older, you expected to deteriorate and die, you just expected that, right? But it doesn't have to be that way. And I think it's kind of inspiring when at least for me, when I'm seeing like videos of freaking 70-year-old people, 80-year-old people like deadlifting or working out looking like they're 30 years old. And it's because were they took control, and they made the changes they wanted to see rather than let other people tell them what is and what isn't, right? So even when like I got my hand operated on, even when they tell me like well, I'd be really careful, like you probably shouldn't even like hold on to anything over like half a pound, like they're saying that, I have to understand that in context. And I'm not going to say like, oh well, if someone tells me like, hey, can you pick this up, I'm not going to say, oh well, no, I can't because I was told this. Like that's just repeating back something without me thinking and chewing on it and having my own opinions on it based upon my knowledge and my experience. And sure enough, like that same day I came out of surgery and I could pick things up, I could carry things, but I was smart about it. And there's something to be said for skepticism. I think everybody should have a healthy doses of skepticism into every piece of information that they are told. And I think another kind of line that goes along with it is believe nothing you hear and half of what you see. So investigate. If someone tells you should do this or you shouldn't do that, investigate it. Look, dive into it a little bit more. If you truly are interested about it and curious about it, dive into it, investigate, research, read. Knowledge is power. I think that's kind of the first place to start, is kind of being aware that your body has these
Yeah.
natural components to it that are going to loop you and can end up working against you if you have the wrong habits or lifestyle.
Yeah, and I think that's the big reason why we're successful as trainers, and because people look for that knowledge from us, and basically they're going to look to us as a reset. Like they're like, hey, you're going to be my homeostasis manager right now. How are you going to do that? Because I need help. And because I don't think a lot of people really know how to do it that aren't really in the field. Like, I think they get a grasp of, stress is bad, eating this is bad, and this, but I don't think they grasp like the total concept of how the human body will react to certain things that you do
There,
to it, good or bad.
Matt, you said earlier, do we have any kind of homeostasis hacks, right? I was just thinking about it, and the best one is something that we use as, coaches and trainers every day, which is, the phenomenon of hormesis and low level stress on the body with something that's, at a high dose could be lethal, is something that you will build up kind of like stress tolerance in the body and your ability to overcome stress and build back the mitochondria and all those other elements of the body that are going to preserve it and get you back into a positive, balanced homeostasis point so that your body can kind of grow and expand. And, that hormesis happens at, for example, exercise. Like, what do we say when somebody's sore after a tough workout? That was a high intensity workout, so high level, we can all admit that exercise at a extreme high dose can be lethal. Like, you can die from it if you redline for too long.
Yeah.
And, if you get close to redline for too long, obviously disease, we talked about all that, but at a very low level, right? When somebody's sore, for example, they say, what do I do? Like, I'm super sore. The next day, do something light, do like a walk, do zone 2 cardio, some sort of exercise at a very low level. And, guess what happens is the body builds up tolerance to that. And so this is that whole process we talked about before, but hormesis is like the technical, explanation of this whole phenomenon. And that happens with everything. You hear of like people who have had a heart attack before. Well, they say take a baby aspirin, right? Take a tiny little aspirin every single day. Something like if we popped a whole bottle of aspirin, you could die. But a very baby aspirin can actually prevent you from having a heart attack. And so these are just two small examples, but this process, you can see it everywhere on getting your metabolism to function better. I'm sorry, not metabolism, but homeostasis to be in balance.
Yeah, most literally, hormesis can be simply put as what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and it's so true. And I think one thing I want to kind of get into, because we've talked about it pretty generally here, but I want to kind of dive into a little bit more specifics about workout structure and different ways to get that stress right. Is certain things to improve your body at that um, at its normative state, right? At sort of at rest, at proving its homeostasis functioning um, at that when there's no stress on the body, but then also putting heavy stress on the body so that your body gets stronger at adapting or recovering or fighting off disease, fighting off infection, or killing sick cells. So the way I understand it is you want kind of two levels of stress. You want that low level helping your parasympathetic nervous system, and you want that every now and then that high level stress working on that sympathetic nervous system. And we often find a lot of people are stuck in between. And these are people who are like before we were kind of the general population that we were talking about was more so people who really aren't working out that often or maybe aren't working out at all. And now I kind of want to get into people who are working out consistently and they have been for some time and they're hitting plateaus, whether that be they're not uh, seeing results. I'll just keep it as general as they're not seeing the results they want to, and they've hit a wall. They feel like they've had been seeing results but aren't anymore. And I find that, or the way I understand stress is that people push themselves above that parasympathetic phase to the point where their sympathetic nervous system is engaged, but not enough to put enough stress on the body where any real changes are made. So they're stuck in that like in the two levels that I mentioned, you're at like 50 to 60, and then at like 90 to 95, your max heart rate, right? And then most people are kind of trapped in that like 60 to 80 range where they're really actually doing damage and bad stress on the body.
Yeah, there's this constant trade-off with that. I see what you're saying, but yeah, I don't know. I'm lost my train of thought for a second.
I agree.
No, and I just kind of meant let's talk a little bit about homeostasis and how it can work against you if you're not putting the right amount of stress in your body. So I guess what my point that I'm getting at here is homeostasis is going to keep you at equilibrium. So if you've gone from sedentary, right, and correct me if I'm wrong here. So if you've gone from sedentary and you become very active, you start to see all these changes, and then the next 6 months go by, you're not really noticing as many changes, but they're still there. And then the next 6 months or 3 months or whatever it may be, you notice like nothing's changing. Still looking for changes. Maybe you're trying to lose a little bit of weight, or maybe you're trying to just, make your legs a little bit bigger, make your arms a little bit bigger if you're Eric.
Yeah.
But but they've reached a point where homeostasis and their equilibrium is their new norm that because they've gone from sedentary right to active, but now that active lifestyle is that norm, and that homeostasis is keeping them at that norm. So I find that
I know exactly where you're going with this, and so I just want to say my advice to that person would be change everything you're doing for a week. Just stop doing what you're doing and do something completely different for a week. So if you're only lifting weights, let's say 4 or 5 days a week for, I don't know, the last couple years, and like you just like, I can't get to that next level. I don't know what's going on. Your body is so much, as Matt said, kind of riding that like, you know, 50% mark. It's like right there, and it doesn't want to stretch in either direction. And so you're not really allowing your body to, have an opportunity to have an adaptation put on it if you're just throwing the same thing at it all the time. And so what I would say is, stop working out altogether. I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but did you ever go on workout and not work out for the entire week? And how did you feel when you did go back and work out after not putting any stress on your body? That first workout, second workout, like your program just, takes off from that point. Like for me, at least, my experience is when I take a full week off, and I'm not saying don't do anything physical, do some walking, do some stretching, but don't lift weights, and then go back to it. And then it's amazing, like that reset that your body gets in that 7 days. And then those stressors just like, they've reset themselves. The receptors are clean. They're ready to go. You put the stress on the system and boom, like your body just does exactly what you want it to do.
Yeah. When I look at that, so I look at it at two ways. When you plateau is like Mike just said, if you take a week off and all of a sudden you get homeostasis to reset, most people, or I don't know if I say most people, but like I think a lot of people get to long-term elevated levels of stress. And I think stress gets a bad rep because it's not a bad word. Like we need some stress for our organism to survive and to keep growing and to thrive. But to keep long-term elevated levels of stress will drive up cortisol, and that will make that will make a breakdown of the metabolic homeostasis. And I think that's where a lot of people start getting burnt out. And it's like if you take that week off and you come back, you feel refreshed because your body literally just stopped it and like was able to get a hard reset back to that normal level. And now instead of being in like sympathetic, you can bring it back to parasympathetic and get that system. On the other side, I think that when people plateau is people don't put enough stress on their body. So they're doing these workouts for 4 to 6 weeks and it's the same workout, and they're not putting enough stress that the body requires to adapt in their workouts. And we've all been there. We've had it where this is starting to feel easy. I can do more weight, but I'm not seeing any numbers move or anything move. Is I think people get comfortable and sometimes don't push the stress level hard enough, where you basically, when you get in shape and really fit, you have to push hard to get an adaptation physiologically. No. And you got to really drive that level. And you can go up and beyond. And I know we talked about like overdoing it, but it does take a lot to really stress the body out, because you can get into, have you guys heard of heterostasis? Which is heavy demands or unusually heavy demands on homeostasis, and then it's the homeostasis is not enough, so the homeostat is raised beyond its capacity, so higher function can happen, which I think will happen at very high intensities levels of workout. So say you like your CrossFits and stuff, they thrive because they're pushing that level, but they're also recovering enough to balance that out and not drive the other end, which is long-term elevated. Does that answer your question, Matt?
Yeah, and I can really appreciate the way you guys went into depth about how that stress can be defined, because previously I would have thought, okay, it just has to be like not just today. Obviously, previously before I would have thought that just needs to be load. But I appreciate that it's could be a new movement. It could be giving your body more time so that you can push yourself harder the next time.
Well, Matt, look at it this way. When we talk about kind of being stuck in that middle, like you're in that middle, you're not high, you're not low, you're just in that middle range all the time, which is what's going on with these people. It just means you need more contrast, right? You just like homeostasis, like you can't ride the middle all the time. You need to have some sort of contrast. You need to have a high so you can get to the low. You need to have war so you can have peace, right? You need
Yeah, yin and yang. You need that dichotomy, that stretching.
yes, yeah, the dichotomy. Exactly. And so if you don't have it, what happens is you ride the middle and you get no adaptation because there is no stress. You are now the stress as opposed to something acting on you. So I think yeah, that's what you need. So like the bodybuilder who just can't get any bigger, how about you start taking some yoga classes, open up some more mobility, open up, a little bit more range of motion, stretch those muscles out, and then see if you can't get bigger. You know what I mean? Have that contrast. A lot of people aren't thinking that way, but
Yeah, and I love that you guys said that because it's so applicable.
Yeah.
Like there's so many people who have hit walls or are stuck in a rut or
yeah.
plateauing, whatever it may be. And some of the quickest advice is, all right, well, take a couple days off, go for some walks, go for some
So
hikes, go do
go
something
ahead.
low intensity activity for a little while. And then,
Yes,
when you
exactly.
go back into it, for a higher intensity workout. I love that because you're right. It's when they're trapped, and it's like when they have those low intensity days, they're actually higher than what they should be, and when they have those high intensity days, they're actually lower than what they should be, and they're just riding that middle ground way too much, and they never get anywhere because their body's kind of comfortable.
Or or they stay in one system of development. So, and it's like a body. We'll take the bodybuilder. They do 12 to 15 reps constantly over and over again, and you're working that glycolytic system. But are they actually getting down into heavy strength? Or are they getting on some sort of aerobics or even sprints? And this is where Mike brought up earlier, like mitochondria matter. How you train your mitochondria basically is going to tell you how efficient you're going to be at basically all metabolic
hmm
processes. So if you're only training weights and not you're
yeah.
skipping conditioning, you're not doing all this other stuff, your body's not going to have a high level and it's going to cap off. Like you need to train variety, differences. That's why I think once you get experience, people need to change up every 4 to 6 weeks constantly to get new adaptations. Just sort of like our conditioning phase we went through,
Yeah.
Matt.
Yeah, but I have like personal experience in this. Like, so just over a month ago, or not, let's take it back like the last like 6 months. I was really in like working in the gym a lot, and I was lifting weights. I was going heavy. I almost got to like I don't know, 475-pound deadlift. Right, was my best. Front squatting 300 pounds. Like I was strong for 180 pounds, and so I got to a point where and my job changed. I wasn't in the gym. My body just was so used to the weights, and so I wasn't in the gym as much. So then I
Oh
started
yeah.
doing body weight training, right? And so magically from, lifting weights, everything was hurting. My hip was hurting, my shoulder would hurt, just because of that constant pounding and putting heavy weight onto it. And that's the only thing I was doing. I wasn't really, stretching as well as I should. I was doing, mobility work and here and there, but not to the level I should. I didn't have that contrast. And so my body started hurting. I got into doing more body weight training. My body started feeling better because now I was moving more naturally. I didn't have all this weight on my body, but I was able to move into positions and move slowly into positions and increase my mobility little by little. And so I got into that. And so I feel like, all right, that got, kind of tapped out after like 5, 6 months. And so I need something different. So like a month ago, I get down on the ground on the mats and now I'm, working jujitsu. And so magically, I'm now going back. I'm doing kind of a little combination of all three of those things. So throughout the week, I will do strength training maybe like 2 days a week. I'll do bodyweight training maybe another 1 or 2 days a week, and then I'll do jujitsu anywhere from like 2 to 3 times a week. And it's the variety that has allowed me to not be in any pain. My hip pain is gone. My knee pain is gone. I don't have any shoulder issues anymore. In fact, when I went back to lifting today after taking like 3 days off after doing like jujitsu a couple times, I was able to drop rock bottom to a squat like so easily without doing hardly any mobility work, and simply because my body has, it just adapted to multiple things because of that variety. And so I don't feel like I'm in a point where I'm going to plateau. And if I do, I know exactly what to do. I'm going to switch up everything I'm doing, you know what I mean, to now create a new stimulus, to create contrast. So if I feel like I'm getting, too big and bulky, I start doing more yoga. If I feel like I'm getting too stiff and I can't like, get up off the ground or get out of my seat fast, I'm going to do more jujitsu, like things like that, where I'm going to pay attention to that feedback. And now I'm going to feed the body what it's asking for, in a contrast.
Yeah, and you see a lot of these programs with these multiple different aspects of training styles, and it's no wonder why people are seeing such results and such benefits because you're just you're constantly creating different demands for the body to adapt and change. And I think that's exactly. I mean, and you get good at, like, you're gonna get good at jujitsu, and then you're gonna step back and be like, holy smokes, like all other aspects of my performance are gonna increase, and those are gonna help jujitsu increase.
Right. As long as I do that, because I think like if I just do jujitsu and I don't lift weights, I will just adapt to being probably more technical, but not as strong. But if I continue to add those things in, like strength training, like body weight training, mobility work, then it's only going to help the entire circle is going to, like, my lifting will be better, my jujitsu will be better, and my mobility will be better. It'll all be better if it's all done together. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, and that's why you see these top athletes, UFC, or even the pro sports, like they're doing multiple different styles of training. Like Mike said, you're doing yoga just to be better in all aspects. Because if you just train one thing and get good at it, you're eventually just going to stop, or you're not going to progress anymore.
The classic line is diversify your portfolio. Essentially, you have some low stressors, some medium stressors, and some high stressors, and just kind of like how you work your financial portfolio. Yeah, I mean, I think it's homeostasis in general is just so important to understand, and understand how it plays a role into your individual body. And I think it can't be, I'm going to use the word, here comes a pun, can't be stressed enough, haha, that everybody's body, I'm corny too, that everyone's body is so different, but from starting points, from the sensory input that you're giving it, from your routine, from your genetics, from your diet, from your sleep patterns, your stress pattern. Homeostasis can be helping you, or it can be hindering you. And there's absolutely 100% possibility for you to change um, your routine if homeostasis is affecting you in a negative way, so that homeostasis actually works with you rather than against you.
I was say you are your best doctor. If we can't expect other people to fix us when we break down or when we're broken.
And that's why they call it practice. A doctor is still doing a practice.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. It is. That's exactly what it is. They don't know anything about us unless we answer the questions that they ask, right? They could run a bunch of tests, but they won't know really what any of it means except the raw data about, or how it relates to this person, right? How it relates to you, how it relates to your life, how you go about, your day, living in pain or inflammation or disease, or living healthy, feeling good, energized, and, carefree. And you are your best doctor. Like, you have to be able to diagnose your own symptoms. You have to be able to pay attention to what's going on to you, because if you don't, like, nobody else is going to do that for you. They're going to do what they think is good for you based on what you tell them.
But you have to be able to tell them what's going on in your body. And if you're not aware, you're not going to give them enough information, or even the right information, to help them help you in the 15 minutes they get to sit down with you. Because I will bring it back to something political, but the healthcare in this country is so screwed up in a way that doctors take all the slack, but people don't understand the way the system is set up. Is like sometimes these practices have to meet quotas of people they have to see per day. So if you have to see 30, 40 people a day, you can't dive in and ask all the right questions that you would like to, and spend 30, 40 minutes with somebody that you might have to or might want to, when you only get 15 minutes to see somebody. Because if you don't meet this quota, now the government isn't going to pay the certain percentage of Medicare, Medicaid that your practice has already seen. So it's so many moving pieces that play a role into it. But I'm not saying that doctors are bad, but I completely agree with Mike's point about you have to be willing to be your own doctor, at least in the beginning of understanding, asking yourself the right questions, understanding, maybe self starting to diagnose yourself, or understanding your own symptoms. And then when you go back to that doctor, or you talk to your doctor, you're able to give them much more feedback, because you understand your body a little bit more. And now they're going to be able to help you that much more.
And you'll be able to help yourself more too, to not even get to that place where you need to rely on the doctor to solve your problem. That's the idea.
Just being self-aware and have people realize what stressors they have in life, and make a list, maybe realize what are good stress and what are bad stress, and try to mitigate the bad stress and the inflammation, because not all inflammation is bad, but most of it is pretty bad, and we get that chronic stress, and then that affects the hormones, that affects our metabolism, our metabolic processes, which is eventually going to lead to Mike's favorite word of the night is disease. So I think people need to be very aware of what their body feels like and what stresses are causing them in life and how it could affect them, and start there before anything else.
Yeah. I mean, in specific cases, like, um, if people are experiencing, like, this unbalanced homeostasis for nutrition, let's say that they're just overeating carbohydrates. Well, what are you not getting? If you're getting too many carbohydrates, you're getting less of something else, right? Let's say it's vegetables, let's say it's protein, right? You rob Peter to pay Paul. So there's something, something's got to give. So if you have too many carbs in your diet, well, then you don't have enough vegetables. And so how can I change that? Like, how can I do a small little, trip down hormesis lane and change my nutrition by saying, well, I'm not going to focus on cutting carbohydrates, but I'm just going to add a little bit of broccoli. You know, just every day I'm going to have a little bit of broccoli. I'm going to add something. From an exercise standpoint, that would be, stress is that thing we feel in the office, when our bosses, put pressure on us to finish a project, or, we're feeling this kind of high level of stress all the time. So we need low stress on the body to help, contrast that. So we go and we exercise, we do a little bit of running. And what does it do? It makes us feel better. Oh, I have less high stress now. Now I'm more low stress. And when I'm high stress, I know that I can go to low stress and my body will then, start to get used to that. So now I'll have the yin and the yang. I'll have the parasympathetic and sympathetic. Because if I'm sympathetic all the time, well, then that means I'm not parasympathetic enough. And if I'm parasympathetic too much, that means I'm not sympathetic enough. And so you need to have, that contrasting levels of things. And so that's all I have to do is think about, what am I not getting right now? Why am I stressed out? Is it sleep? Why am I not sleeping? Well, maybe I'm, doing too much stimulating type of things in the daytime because my body's not, slowing down or down regulating. Maybe I need to start. What are the things that are stimulating for me? Well, it's having my computer screen on, or looking at Facebook at 10 o'clock at night. Maybe it's the cup of coffee I had at 3 o'clock in the afternoon because I was feeling sluggish after lunch. Maybe it's all these stimulant things. Well, now I need to do more, things that are putting me in a more depressant state. I'm gonna, meditate. I'm going to read. I'm gonna do anything that would do the opposite reaction of what I'm doing. And so it's really like, I say this is easy. It's not easy. It's easy to understand the context of what we have available to us right now. The action of doing it is the hard part, which we talked about just a few weeks ago with goal setting. And with that, we know that we can't wait to be motivated to do these things. We just have to take action on them, and eventually we see the fruits of our labor. But that doesn't happen unless we pull the trigger.
But it's important to recognize that it isn't easy. I mean, there are going to be things that you don't want to do. There are going to be uncomfortable points, but it's important to get through that. It's important to have that stubbornness or that courage or that discipline to just push through it and try something, and know that if you don't do it or you don't do it right, that you are gonna get feedback and learn and get better, or try a different method. And you maybe not done it now, but it's not yet, right? You didn't get your success yet. So you just have to remember that there are going to be um, I don't know. I think the hardest part is just kind of getting over that mental hump, especially for people who are not very active currently, trying to get into a routine and trying to break into a more healthier homeostasis point in their life. And even for people who are hitting plateaus and starting to get frustrated and wanting to quit and wanting to give up and wanting to just go home and call it a day, like the hardest part is just kind of getting over that mental hump of just saying, no, I'm going to do it anyway. Or, Eric always said, just do it. Just do it. Just do it. It's as simple as that. Like when
Nike has the greatest quote ever. Yeah.
They seriously do. They seriously have the best motto ever. Just do it. Yeah, because sometimes we fall into a trap of overthinking, and it can be like overthinking and looking in deep into things can be our best friend. It can be our greatest enemy, and we have to be able to recognize that contrast as well. No evil propensity of the human soul is so powerful that it may not be subdued by discipline. And that hits home for me because I was very much a kid that had paralyzing social anxiety to the point where, like, if somebody invited me over, I had to be like, well, who's there? Like, there's a lot of people there. Like, and it would just be world ending. And I would just be so reclused and just so in my own world and away from all that stuff, and reading about exercise and how it released endorphins and made you feel better, and I wanted to build confidence, and it was just so rewarding to me to be active and get myself into routine and have that discipline. And I'm so much more confident today than I was 5-10 years ago, because I had that discipline of, no matter what happens for the rest of the day, I'm going to get up, I'm going to eat breakfast, and I'm going to go to gym before class. This was in college because I was just that much in a negative world, that I wanted to get out of it. And I wanted to break out of that homeostasis. I wanted to break out of that comfortable bubble I was in, and that negative feedback loop. And it required discipline. Sometimes we know the answer, but we don't apply it.
Yes. I'll go next. So, Matt, while we're on Stoicism, I will quote Marcus Aurelius: "Think think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now take what's left and live it properly." So the question is that this is the how. How do we do that? That's kind of Matt just spoke on. Um, well, I would say it's simply this: if you're cold, what do? You put on a jacket or you put on a blanket. You need to have contrast, and you need to pay attention to the contrast, and you need to leverage contrast. So if you know like I said, if we're hot, we put the AC on. There needs to be this yin and this yang. Now, the screw it, just do it, and just do it don't work. I mean, yeah, we'd like to think like we can all think that way, but just like we've been in this kind of depressive, you know, chronic depressive state because of all these diseases and things that have kind of happened and developed over time, we need to be able to break out of that. And so, if we're feeling low on energy, do something that is energy. I don't know, jump up, scream, yell, go out and go for a run. Like, do something is the opposite of what you feel. When you feel that way. So, for example, if you're working out too much and you're high stressed, do meditation. Do something on the opposite end of the spectrum of high attention and focus. Do something that is completely low level of focus, very zeroed in focus. Meditation, right? Quiet. Practice your breath. Heart rate comes down. All these other things. We need to just simply look at it as that and say, I'm going to do something that is completely opposite of what I'm doing right now. And if I have that contrast, if I can play that out in my life every day, then my body is going to operate and function so much better.
Damn, discipline and contrast. Two of my favorite things. Yeah, you got me all fired up over here. You got to go to bed soon. And I'm like, all right, let's go. But I love it because those two for me, for what kind of I think is homeostasis, is people need contrast and change stuff up. Work harder, do stuff out of your comfort zone, have that discipline to change up and stay on something that you can continuously do and do it to a point where you see results. And when you have no results, change it up, have that contrast. Big thing I tell people out there who are listening is you got to push your physiological limits. You have to push yourself out of that comfort zone. And once you get to a new level, you'll have that discipline, you'll stay there, and you just get to another one. But I don't think a lot of people are pushing themselves as hard as they can or have the discipline enough as they need.
Yeah, very well put. I don't think people are pushing themselves, and not even, not saying pushing themselves like to be successful and do work, but pushing themselves to just do things that they're not normally used to doing. Just doing the hard things that, are different from my regular routine. Doing things that are completely opposite of what I've been doing. It's really hard to do. Um, Man, we can go forever with this.
I know we could just keep going. We really could, but I really think I don't know, just it's hitting home, and I love it, and I think it's going to become a slogan of ours one day about something about like regaining contrast in your life. It's just it's such an important aspect, and it can be applied to the person who isn't getting enough exercise. It can be applied to the person who's exercising too hard, not getting enough like meditation or sleep in their life, that low level stress again. It'd be great to hear some feedback from people, kind of what our listeners are more interested in hearing us talk about or assisting with if we can. So again, thinkfitnesslife@gmail.com. um, we also, subscribe to our channel if you like what you heard. Leave some comments. Feedback is always appreciated. As we're talking about here, getting feedback from your body. It's the only way you can get better is understanding the feedback. Same thing with us. The only way we can provide better podcasts for our listeners and provide better information and clear information and practical information is getting feedback. So write us in an email. We appreciate any and all feedback, even